and welcome to the Essence of Tea podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Jeh with Sipping Streams Tea Company, and I have with my wonderful friend here, Brittany Dodson. Brittany, introduce yourself and let people know where you are streaming in from, because you obviously are not in Alaska right now.
I'm Brittany Dodson, and I am currently in Los Angeles, and I'm excited to learn about matcha today.
Yeah, so in our wonderful episode today, and say hello in the chat if you're watching this live, because we are recording this live. Let us know where you're watching from, any questions you have about matcha, because we're going to have this fun episode about discovering more about matcha, this really popular green tea that is just like taking over the country and the world. Really, everyone's talking about matcha, and it's been trending for a while now, but it just seems to be like more and more intense, and people have curious questions besides just buying a matcha latte. So today we have Brittany here, and she's going to be unboxing a Matcha Kit. So Brittany, you want to share with them like what you've got in front of you?
Yeah, I'm so excited because it looks like I have everything to make my own matcha. So I have this bowl here. This is a beautiful bowl. And then the matcha looks amazing. This is the award-winning matcha, I assume, because it says it's the champion.
Yeah, it won first place American Tea Championship. So it's one of our award-winning teas at Sipping Streams.
Wow, this is cool. And then, is this called a whisk or?
Yeah, you can call it a whisk. It's a single piece of bamboo that's been hand split. So like every other thread is pulled into the middle, and then it has these knots in it that keep its shape. And so this is actually called a chasen. Chasen, Chasen. But that's what, it's a bamboo whisk, but you can call it.
I love the bamboo. This is like a piece of bamboo, and then they split it out. And I'm excited to learn how to use this. And then there is this. It's a stir stick, but I know it's another piece of bamboo.
Yeah, so it's called a chishaku, and it's a scoop to scoop out your matcha. So this is for measuring out your matcha the traditional way, instead of actually using a teaspoon. So you would use this and kind of like get the matcha.
This is for the stirring. And then the I have to get the names right. Okay, so this is
called a chishaku.
Chishaku, and then the whisk is a
chasen.
Chasen. Got it.
Or you could just call it a scoop and a whisk. No worries.
And then this is little green.
It's a holder.
Oh.
Yeah, so you can have if you make lots of matcha, it keeps the shape of your whisk, your chasen, to keep being open instead of like shrinking down and closing up, because that single piece of bamboo is going to want to, when it absorbs water over and over again, will want to actually turn it back into a single piece of bamboo. So this kind of keeps its shape.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Not a lot of people use these, but for those hardcore matcha drinkers who drink matcha every day, it's a good thing just to have your whisk stay open longer.
Okay. That's very cool. Cool.
Yeah.
So I have my water ready.
Mm-hmm.
I put it at 180 because I didn't have the temperature 175, but 180 is.
Yeah, that's good. You just want it steaming hot. So some people don't have a thermometer or like a digital kettle that even has temperatures. So I say steaming hot. When you start seeing some steam come out, that's good to go. It doesn't have to be super specific. Preferably not boiling water, but either way, it's a lower temperature tea, because it's green tea, and it's a really potent, delicate green tea. So you just don't want it to be boiling and like extracting this like any bitter flavors out of it.
From what I know about matcha, it's the leaves all powdered together, and so it's not like a tea where you steep it, you get the oils and everything, and you dump out the leaves. This is the leaves that you keep in the cup.
Yeah, Exactly. So matcha is the whole pure meat of the leaf. And it is not tea broth. Like when you steep your tea, like in a regular tea pot, and it's kind of like tea broth because then you take the leaves out, kind of like if you made chicken stock or something like that. And then you're consuming the whole pure meat of the leaf. So you get all the health benefits because it's almost like drinking like I don't want to say a hot tea smoothie, but essentially it's kind of like a smoothie, like in a drink, because everything's in it all at once.
I was thinking about that. Yeah, that's exactly how I would have put it, more like a smoothie. And I'm sure it's has a lot more caffeine or
Yeah, a lot more caffeine. And that's why people like to drink matcha because it gives them a lot of energy boost for their day. But I mean, caffeine is caffeine no matter what plants it's in, whether it's in chocolate or whether it's in coffee or yerba mate or tea. But the tea plant itself has, like, especially the greener it is, it has a lot of L-theanine, which calms and relaxes your body. And so that's why people say the caffeine feels different, but it's actually not the caffeine that you're feeling that's different. It's the different components that you're consuming that you're not getting in, for example, coffee or in a soft drink.
Cool. Yeah. So should I get my hot water?
Yes, you should get your hot water and you should pour some of your hot water into the bowl. So the very first thing that you're going to do when you're about to make matcha, and we're not making matcha like in the traditional Japanese tea ceremony set, we're just making a consumable bowl of matcha, is to put just a tiny bit on the bottom of your matcha bowl, which is called a chawan, which you don't have to remember what's called, but in Japanese it's called a chawan. So like a little bit put on the bottom of your bowl, and that way you can warm up or like soften your bamboo whisk before you whisk briskly with it. So just a little bit of water on the bottom of it, and then you kind of just put your whisk in here and kind of just like, yeah, just stir it around a little bit. You're kind of softening it because everyone in the world has a kind of a different environment. In Fairbanks, Alaska, where I am from, it is very dry, like extremely dry. We got a lot of forest fires happening right now. And you just kind of want to like soak in the water into the bamboo to make it a little softer. So when you vigorously whisk, it's not going to snap off any of the pieces of your bamboo. And it kind of rinses it off for you, because if you're going to wash your whisk, you don't really want to use soap because it's porous and it might absorb that flavor into your, organic bamboo whisk. So yep, and then you can just dump it out. Sorry to make you get up again, but like
that works.
Dump it out into like another container, a bowl, the sink, wherever you want. But we do get that question sometimes here, is like, why does my pieces of my bamboo whisk break off, my chasen break off? And it's because you want to kind of soften the grains of the bamboo a little bit. So now we've softened the whisk or the chasen, and we're going to scoop out the matcha. So have you opened up your matcha tin yet?
Let's see. Oh, wow. It's like a tuna can.
Yeah, so watch like how she opens it up. It might go poof, and this bright green powder, the matcha powder, might go everywhere.
So that keeps it really fresh then, having it sealed like that.
Yes, yeah, it's airtight, and you can see, like, show them the lid, the inside lid. Like, it is super bright, brilliant green, and you want that bright, brilliant green color. That's that vibrancy and showing you that, like, the essential oils are still intact and not oxidized. One thing that people don't realize is, whoa, like mine just went like a poop powder. So you when you find your matcha is like this very ashy gray color, it's probably gone stale. Not stale all the way, but it's just not as potent with the benefit of matcha. And so you actually want to keep your matcha in the refrigerator if you can, especially if you live in California. It's hot. Like, doesn't matter if it's a culinary grade, a ceremonial grade. So that's why at Sipping Streams, we always keep our matcha in a refrigerator. We have like this mini display fridge where we put all of our matchas for sale, because with it sitting on the shelf, you know, who knows how long this matcha has been sitting out in transportation, going from, you know, the warehouse of where the matcha is made. Usually matcha producers are keeping them in freezers before they ship them out to keep them fresh as possible.
Is it the fresh leaves that are powdered, or is it dried and then made into the powder?
That's a great question. So what they do in the springtime, like April and May, they slowly starve the plants of sunlight. So there's these giant canopies. Like, I say giant because they're covering tea fields, and they're slowly starving the plant of sunlight. They're shading it manually instead of with cloud coverage on your high-end, high-grown tea leaves. So in Japan, they're shading it with these big rows of canopies and slowly starving the plant of sunlight. Then they are harvesting it just like they would for like any sort of high-quality tea. This one is all hand harvested, the imperial matcha, and that's what you have, the award-winning tea. And then they dry it. They steam dry it instead of heat dry like Chinese tea. So Japanese prefer steam drying, and that's what gives it that umami, seaweedy, chlorophyll flavor. When you steam dry it, intakes more of the chlorophyll in it. And that's what some people don't prefer, that flavor, because it kind of reminds them of seaweed, but it's actually that flavor that you're tasting is actually chlorophyll, which is really good for your body and keeping your youthfulness too. Wow. So they make it into a dry tea, and then they cut up the tea leaves, kind of like how wheat has the chaff, and then they're grinding it up and then blowing off like the extra parts of the stems and the veins. So they do dry the tea leaves and then process it and try to remove as much of the veins and the stems from it. So it's the whole pure meat of the leaf, not the inside filler stuff of it. And then it's ground into an extremely fine powder. So only half a micron fine of a powder. That's why when you open the container, it goes poof, like smaller than makeup powder. Sometimes if you get it on your hands, you're like, whoa, it's just like sinking into your skin, because it's so fine, it's smaller than a smoke particle, and it's ground with a granite wheel. So I don't know if you ever like looked online or any like YouTube videos, you can see that it's being ground with specifically granite wheels so that the friction of grinding it doesn't cook the nutrients out of the tea leaves, because it's like high intensity of spinning it in these granite stone wheels to grind it up into that small powder. Now, you had asked, like, is it fresh leaves that they're grinding up, or is it dry leaves? It's definitely dry leaves, and then they are able to grind it into that small powder. But it takes about an hour, actually, of grinding to make one of these, to make 1 ounce.
Wow.
It's a very labor-intensive process when you have high-quality matcha.
So it's a lot of leaves.
Yeah, it's a lot of leaves. It's very fine. I mean, this one is hand harvested, the one that you have, but sometimes like your lower culinary grades ones, like if you go to the grocery store, say went to Walmart or something like that, usually it's less expensive because it's machine harvested versus hand harvested. So the machine doesn't differentiate necessarily the quality of the matcha leaves that have been grown.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, I think your water temperature has dropped probably. So in a perfect temperature. Do you want to dump out? Did you dump out the waste?
Yes.
The water? Okay, perfect. All right. So I'm going to show you about how much. So you're going to eyeball about 1 teaspoon. And I don't know, can you see in yours? It's kind of clumpy. Does it look a little clumpy in yours?
Yeah.
So that clumpiness is because of slight bit of moisture, like the slightest bit in that can, because it's so fine, it will actually clump because it's just so small and fine. Like any sort of like, atmospheric type of environment that might have a tiny bit of humidity or moisture, because it's not completely clear. So I'm going to show you about how much you would scoop out. Like that much.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can practice a couple times with your chishaku, your scoop. So there you go. Perfect. Yep.
That looks good.
And so for those of you who want to cheat, I was telling Brittany, you can use like a sieve or some sort of tea strainer if you had one. You don't have to have one. But some people, like when we entered the World Tea Expo Top Tea Infusionist competition, we put ours in a sieve, and then you know how you put like powdered sugar on cookies sometimes, and then you're just pressing it in, see how it just kind of like comes out a little bit. That just kind of makes it faster and easier, but you don't have to do it that way. So if you don't have one, just go ahead and put your matcha right into your bowl, because I'm going to show you a really good technique on how to get really smooth, frothy matcha. So it's okay if you don't have a sieve, but for those of you who are like, I'm not very good at the whole whisking technique, it is super easy. So you got your matcha in there?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'm going to teach you.
Such a small amount.
Well, it's very potent. So good matcha, more does not taste better. More sometimes makes it taste not as good or bitter.
Okay.
So with your whisk, remember you're whisking as if you were like stirring, like I don't know how you would describe it. I forgot how. Anyways, you're not folding it. You're not baking. So
like
there should
whipped cream.
It should be an M or a W.
Oh, like back and forth.
Yep, just M or.
You're not stirring it.
Yes, because you're not folding it. You're just baking it in your bowl. So some people like to do it side to side. Some people do it up and down. That's how I was taught, was straight up and down. But either way, it's just a straight line, whichever. Don't use your wrist in a circle. Don't use your elbow. You're not baking. You're making matcha. And what's really nice about it is because the single piece of bamboo's got little parts here and here, strands here, it should grab onto the small particles really easily.
Okay.
When you whisk your matcha on the bottom of your bowl, you're almost going to do like a, whoops, I had water in here. Hold on a second. I forgot to empty out the water. So you're going to kind of like do a scraping technique. It is going to scrape on the bottom of your bowl, and you'll hear it. And so don't be afraid to press against the bowl and do an up and down or side straight line, whatever your technique is.
So this is before we add any water.
So we're going to add the water next, but I just want to show you what it looks like before, because some people think, oh, it's so delicate, I need to be like in the middle of the water. No, scrape the bottom of the bowl. And that's we also had it warmed up. We softened the bamboo. So how much water do you put in? I would say put in about a third of your bowl, about 6 to 8 ounces. So you have a typical chawan matcha bowl. Some people might use an ice cream bowl at home, but it ends up being 6 to 8 ounces of water, of steaming hot water. So go ahead and, probably like, oh, I hope I get this right, but fill in about a third full of water. You got this. You got this.
I want to see how full yours is so that I know.
Oh, well, I put, it's literally like right here.
Okay.
Like, perfect. I think the same bowl. So it's about right there, like a third of the inside. Yeah.
That's exactly what I would get.
And then press straight in the middle and then only one direction. And you go as fast as you can.
Oh.
For just like 5 seconds.
Good thing it's not really full, because otherwise all the water would spill out.
Oh yeah, you'd get green all over you.
Yeah.
And you should be able to hear it, like, splashing and scraping the bottom. Like, that's what you want to do.
Okay. I get like, I do think it's like delicate, so I'm like scared to really push into it.
No, don't be afraid. It's matcha. It's pretty hardy. And if you don't like scrape against the bottom, you're gonna miss some of the lumps of the matcha. So sometimes when people drink matcha traditionally and they've had it from like a coffee shop or something like that, maybe the barista, it's not a tea shop, but it's like a coffee shop, they don't know how to whisk properly. And so you're drinking those really strong clumps at the bottom of your bowl.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
It's looking kind of bubbly.
Oh, perfect. You want it to be kind of bubbly if you can. If you use a really low temperature, like you could do cold matcha, you can put straight cold water in there. It will not have as many bubbles, which is totally fine. But you want to use steaming hot water or lower. So, and then if you're a newbie, actually mine's perfect, but like, I don't know. I don't know how yours is because you can't. Well, I don't want you to tip your bowl over.
It looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Oh, you
Nice.
can't really see.
Bright and green. Okay, and then when you drink your matcha, so you only need to whisk it about 5 seconds, 5 to 10 seconds. It's really easy to do. You don't have to worry about like a battery operated aerator. Some people use those, but this is just so fibrous. That's why I love making it with a matcha whisk or chasen because it's just so fast. And especially if it's going to be hot, you're not going to splash anything. So usually when I just make a traditional bowl of ceremonial matcha, I just use this. It's just so convenient.
I do have the other like power whisk that you would use. So you could use that too.
You could use that too. That's probably more convenient for something that is smaller in diameter, like a cup. So
this is so fun.
How does it look? Does yours bumpy on the bottom? Mine looks
I don't think so, but it's really fun to whisk back and forth. I'm just keep on whisking it.
And then you just drink it out of the bowl like this.
I do see some. No, I think I did pretty good actually. I was gonna say I see some like little pieces, but it looks pretty clear.
Oh, good. And then sometimes it settles and separates. Like if you leave your matcha bowl and you don't drink it all for like half an hour, you walk away and you go read some emails or something like that, you'll see like a layer of sediment on the bottom. That's just the matcha powder like separating in there. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, how does it taste?
You know what's crazy is that every time I have had matcha, it is very bitter, and I personally do not like it. But this does not taste like any matcha that I've had before. But I mean, I've always just had like a matcha latte that you would buy somewhere. I haven't made it myself, or maybe it was the different matcha powders, but it was not. It was so bitter. This does not taste like that. This tastes like green tea.
Yes, it's green tea. And we get that comment all the time about our ceremonial matchas. We sell 3 different kinds of ceremonial matchas. And even our beginner one, the Matcha Serenity, is not bitter. And part of it has to do with making the matcha, but part of it, like the biggest part of it, is the quality of the matcha. Same thing with like any of the teas. Like I know you're a big fan of pu'er tea. And so not all pu'ers are created equal. Not all matchas are created equal. And the average consumable, like, what do you call it? Like a commodity matcha, the reason why it's inexpensive is that it is not as pure. The leaf quality isn't as good. And so you kind of have this strong, like you said, bitterness. And you're like, ugh, it's like, it's not that it's so grassy. It's like grassy with bitterness in it.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, every time that I've had matcha, I just was like, this is not good. And so I kind of stopped getting it because it's so, or unless I put like a bunch of sugar or something to cover up the flavor. But I was like, man, matcha does not taste good. And then I tasted this. I'm like, wow, this tastes like green tea. That's like amazing. So I'm really happy.
Good. How does it feel? How does it feel in your mouth? Like, besides that it tastes good, like do you feel any like smoothness or lumpiness?
It's really smooth, to be honest. It's not like anything that I've had before.
So yeah, and one of the big things also that most people don't realize is to put it in the refrigerator. Like we teach people that all the time. Put it in your fridge, especially if you're in a hot place. You're gonna, drink matcha only once a month. Keep it in the fridge so it lasts longer. There
Wow.
is shelf life for matcha, and the average shelf life is 1 year.
Will this is it like the oxidization tank kind
Yeah.
of thing?
So yeah, in your refrigerator, like the more the matcha you drink, the more air there's going to be in here, right? And
Mm.
even a tiny amount of air, because it's so fine and small, it's going to start oxidizing. So just putting in your refrigerator kind of prevents the speed of oxidation. So it just slows everything down. And there's nothing wrong with like just pulling out your matcha out of the fridge, which I did. Just pulled it out of the fridge and then I just made it. It doesn't have to sit at room temperature or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. This is a beautiful color too. It's like a dark green soup.
Yeah. And I don't know if you see around the edges, you kind of see like it looks a little thin around
Mhm.
the edge where the light refracts, and then it goes right back into like this thicker green color
Mhm.
sometimes. And that's because the particles like evenly distributing because you did a good job whisking in your bowl of matcha.
Yeah, this looks great. Not like any matcha I've seen before. I've always seen like a lighter green color.
So, and this is a very bold matcha actually. So earlier I was saying more matcha is not necessarily better. So
Mhm.
it also depends on the recipe of whoever's making your matcha for you. Some people want their matcha extremely bold, really thick. So they'll put more matcha in it. But this amount of matcha is what the average, ceremonial matcha would be, and which you enjoy because the average person would enjoy it even if they thought they never liked matcha. They might change their minds about this matcha.
Yeah, I didn't know before, and so when I would make matcha, I would put like a giant spoonful and wonder why it was so strong. Oh
I
man.
had very interesting matchas experiences too, like at different like tea rooms. One time I got matcha to go, and I thought that was so strange that they offered matcha to go because I normally make it in a bowl. So I'm like, what do you mean the matcha's to go? Is this ceremonial matcha? And they said, oh yeah, it's ceremonial matcha. And I was like, okay. I'm like, I'll order it to go because I've never had ceremonial matcha to go. I wonder how they're gonna make it. I wonder if they're gonna make it in a bowl and then put it in the thing. They didn't. They put like a spoonful, like a heaping spoonful.
Oh,
They just took like a fork or a spoon and mixed it. So it was like really lumpy and like a sludge on the bottom.
man.
So I just let it settle and I took a little sip and I was like, oh, this is really strong. I think they put too much matcha in it. And I waited later on in the day, maybe like, several hours. I drank some more. I'm like, oh, my tummy feels not good. Like, this is really strong. And it turned out they put way too much matcha on the bottom of it. I'm like, oh, I think think it's like hot chocolate.
Over. Yeah, I think that's maybe how I got the idea. I was like, oh yeah, more is better. Just keep spooning it in, and it was not good. But I was wondering why it was not good, but this is so good to know.
Yeah. Well, what do you think, Brittany? You gonna make more matcha this way?
Yeah, I'm so excited to make matcha this way because this is like nice to have some energy from tea, and you don't even need that much. Like this is such a small amount.
And about like if you don't feel the matcha kicking in, you should feel it come like kick in. Like I'm starting to feel it in my head a little bit, like the energy, where like in about half an hour after you drink some of it, you're just like, whoa, I feel very heightened and alert, but like relaxed at the same time. So I tell people about in half an hour, you should feel it kind of kicking in your head.
Hmm. Do you drink it out of this, or would you put it into another cup or?
For me, because it's just a small amount, I usually drink it in one sitting. But if I have to take it on the go, I could just put it in a to-go cup and then walk out the door with it. It doesn't really matter. And if you're having like this nice high-end ceremonial matcha, I really you can put it in anything. You can make a matcha latte with it. You can make a matcha lemonade, anything, like strawberry matcha milk if you wanted to. But you might as well just use the lower grade matcha, the less expensive matcha for that, because you'll want to sweeten it.
Mm.
And if you have some stale matcha at home, and when I say stale, it's just because it's ashy pale color,
Mhm.
um, you'll probably want to use that in those other mixtures
Mm.
because it's just keeping this special because you've spent so much money on it
Mm.
versus the other stuff. Because I just say like matcha is still matcha. It's just how can you apply it so it's still enjoyable?
Yeah, the other day I had a lychee matcha, and then it was like real, pieces of lychee, and then they added it to the drink, and it was really good. So I like that idea of maybe putting it with some ice and just adding lychee to it.
Yeah, and I mean it's your matcha, so you can do whatever you want with it, and you don't have to drink it pure on its own. But when you're spending, like a pretty penny on it, it's just up to you. And whatever is going to make you enjoy it, so you get all of the health benefits, like that youthfulness. I know that you're really big into health
Mm-hmm.
and youthfulness and wellness. So this is something that it's the most potent and healthiest tea you can drink out there because of the way that's grown, produced, and consumed.
Yeah,
Just
what's funny is I drink chlorophyll and I didn't know that it was in matcha. I mean, I guess it makes sense because it's green, but I've been taking these chlorophyll drops for, my skin and stuff. And so I'm like, wow, I did not know that was in matcha.
yeah, we've had people who've had a bowl of matcha. They make a bowl of ceremony matcha 5 days a week for a month, and we've had a lot of customers. Now I'm not going to say this is going to work for you, but just the testimonials, like people have said they feel so energized, so like youthful, like their coworkers have said their skin is glowing, that they have this really like attitude of like positivity and happiness and joy, and actually about at least 5 of them have lost 10 pounds a month without changing their diet, without exercising. They just feel good and energized. Now I'm not going to say it's going to work for everyone. It's not a guaranteed weight loss thing, but there's something about the quality of the tea that is like completely different if you drink coffee. And like you said, it's just full of chlorophyll. And so these people who have this glowing aura about them, I'm sure it's, showing, on them, on their skin, on their smile, on their alertness. So yeah.
Yeah, I like to try new things, and anything that will help me like stay looking young and anything like that. I'm like, let's try it. So this is perfect.
Well, thank you, Brittany, so much for joining us today, for discovering matcha. Brittany, do you have any other questions? Anything else you want to share with anyone?
Um, I don't think so. I think I'm really glad that I got to do this. And yeah, this is a beautiful kit. So it's been really fun.
And then where can they find cakes? You like share, you're a big tea person, right? So
Yeah.
how can we find out more about you and maybe all your other matcha recipes you might come up with, or the drinks that, how do people find out more about you and your tea?
It'll be fun to like come up with some fun videos for this. But my Instagram is just hi Brittany Ann. So HI like hi, and then Brittany Ann with BRITTANYANN.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for another fun episode on the Essence of Tea podcast. I really hope you enjoyed this. Send us any of your questions or any other topics you want to learn more about in the world of tea, and check out Hi Brittany Ann on Instagram, all her wonderful videos, reels, and I'm excited to see what other things she does with matcha.
Thanks.
Thank you everyone.